You are listening to Her Time to Retire, a podcast dedicated to helping women gain the knowledge, confidence, and support they need to achieve financial success and emotional fulfillment when planning for retirement. If you are ready to finally take charge of your financial life, then keep listening. Your hosts are Glenn Price and Jonathan Scott, founders of Keystone Financial Resources in Brentwood, Tennessee. Both men specialize in crafting individualized retirement plans for women and have a passion for helping women discover and achieve their retirement goals. Glenn is a husband and father of four who was taught early in life through his relationship with his grandmother how a woman can not only take charge of her own destiny, but also positively influence the lives of her family and friends that surround her. Jonathan, husband and father of three, attributes his own success to the strong women in his life, including his wife Brooke and his mother Suzanne. Both men together want to help more women live out their dreams in retirement. As always, if you have retirement questions, their phone lines are open at 615-661-9554, or you can visit their website to browse information, view upcoming events, or subscribe to the Her Time to Retire weekly newsletter. Just visit www.keystonefinancialresources.com. Now relax and enjoy the conversation.
Well, hello, ladies. I want to welcome you to the Her Time to Retire podcast, where Jonathan and I help women learn how to take control of their finances and their destinies. Well, I'm Glenn Price, and I'm going to be your host today. And I'm so excited about our podcast because I've got Athena West with us this morning, and she is just full of energy. You ladies are going to love hearing from her and what she has to say. But before we get into that, let me tell you a little bit about what I know about you, Athena, and then you can tell us a little bit more about what I don't know.
Got it.
Athena is the publisher of Franklin Lifestyle Magazine, and Athena is a former television reporter who has always had a love for writing. She moved to Franklin with her husband and two children back in 2014, and she said it was the best decision that she ever made. She fell in love with Franklin and determined to go from being a new resident to the resident expert as quickly as possible. So it was only natural to blend her love of storytelling with her love of Franklin by joining lifestyle publications. She really gets a pleasure from telling the stories of the people, businesses, and events that are happening right here in Franklin. So Athena, welcome to our podcast today. I'm excited about you being here.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell the ladies just a little bit more about who you are?
Well, first of all, you nailed that. I did not give you that information. I think you just remembered that from us meeting. I was like, geez. Yeah, so I did. We moved here because we were looking for a change. We wanted, a community that we could grow, that our family could grow in. And yes, I used to be in television. I've got some amazing stories.
I bet you do.
Man, being in front, I can tell you, how to ice fish on the Lake Erie. And just about big towns and small towns. But at the end of the day, there's a high burnout rate in the television industry. There's a saying in television, if it bleeds, it leads. Mm-hmm. And I got tired of telling all the bleeding stories. And I wanted to get to the good parts, right? Mm. I loved doing those end of the newscast stories where it's the feel-good stories. So now I get to still tell stories, but I get to do all the good stories, and I don't have to worry about the bleeding part of it. I also decided that I didn't want to be the next Barbara Walters and get into that rat race. So for me, I wanted to find joy again in writing. So,
well, why Franklin? How did you choose Franklin? Where did you come from?
So we came from Richmond, Virginia. We lived there for 15 years. And my husband and I had a little bit of wanderlust. We actually looked at moving out of the country, being expats for a year or two. But that's hard to do because you need a sponsor. So my husband was coming here. He works in healthcare, so naturally, Nashville, right? Mm-hmm. So he was coming here for a contract that he had, and he was coming home more refreshed from a business trip than when he left. Usually from a business trip, you're supposed to be exhausted and you just want to, unpack. But he was like, we got to, this town is pretty cool. And he said, we should really look at Nashville. You're going to love it there. And I said, Nashville? we don't even like country music. Why would I want to go to Nashville? He said, no, it's not like that. I mean, it could be like that if you're into that, but it's really just a music city. It's just cohesive. It's got a lot of energy. So we came here on a couples weekend. We checked it out. I had my criteria. I said it has to have good schools, has to be clean, has to be pretty. I had my checklist. He had his ticker list. It had to have a pro football, pro hockey, because we're a hockey family, all these different things, and his necessary. So we came down. I kid you not, if anybody knows Franklin, we came on the weekend of the October Pumpkin Fest in downtown Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
We had no clue that was the weekend. We just came upon it, and I was like, come on, man. This is like some sort of Hallmark movie, right? We land on Pumpkin Fest, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we put the house up for sale 6 weeks later. We had a plan in place. Like I had said, we had been looking, we had wanderlust. So we put a plan in place, put the house on the market. It sold 6 weeks later. And I was like, dang, we got to move to Nashville. So we did. And nobody believed us because they were like, are you going for work? He said, no, I'm going to work remote. Are you going for family? Nope. Just fell in love. Life is short. And we moved here and never, if it didn't fit in the moving truck, it didn't come with us. And that is how we got to Franklin.
Well, welcome to Franklin. We're so glad you came. And, one of the things I get from you when we're together, whether it's in person or on the phone, is just the energy and the genuineness and your genuine love for this area.
It's my identity.
And you're so excited, and it's contagious. Mm-hmm. Our last conversation we had over the phone, I went away from that and I thought, when she comes on the podcast, I wrote down living the life you were made to live. Yeah. Because as I listen to your story, it's like, wow, you really thought through it.
Yep.
But you're living that life, and it's contagious. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down, the right mindset, taking ownership of your life. And I believe that everyone, if you asked them that question, hey, do you really want to live the life you were made to live? They would say, of course I do. But sadly, most don't. Yeah. And so why don't we talk about that for a minute? Like, what is it that's blocking the women out there today, women who find themselves, single, mm-hmm. Widowed, divorced, whatever it may be, facing the challenges that sometimes feels like a man's world in certain areas, but what is it that's holding them back?
So I have, it's interesting. I meet a lot of people and I get to hear their stories. And I think the common thread, that I find is, they can't believe I did it. I'd be too scared to up and move. I would be too afraid. How did you know if it was going to work? So I think what it all comes down to is fear or anxiety, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of, the what ifs, fear of just not knowing. And that's a human, it's a very necessary human emotion or reaction. But for me, I have made an active decision in all of the steps of my life to not let that what if stop me. I have made an active decision, since I was little to, make active decisions, not random, right? There's thought and planning and a lot of, just sort of seeing the different angles of it, but active decisions to take ownership of my life and the direction I want my life to go.
Mm-hmm. I was just sitting here thinking as you're talking, there's a lot of you women out there who are doing that very thing. Mm-hmm. But I feel like today I want to talk to those who are not, who are not living the life they were made to live. And so what would you say to these ladies out there that, who maybe they have dreams or they have ideas, but they've given up or they're stuck. They don't know what to do. They're finding themselves in this new situation in their life, for example, scared and afraid or lonely. Like, what would you say to them about, all right, how do you begin to do that?
Yeah. So we have a few sayings in our, like I said before, one of my husband's criteria was a pro hockey team. We are a hockey family. Wayne Gretzky has a very famous quote that we literally live by, and it is that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah,
that is so
That
true.
is how we live our lives. You don't know unless you try. And I'm well aware that taking that first step can seem like a huge fall, but if you just take that first step, that allows you to take the next step, which allows you to take the next step. And then at the end in your journey, it's not the anxiety or fear that was there because you're taking ownership of these micro steps, but it's taking that first step and acknowledging, well, first it's acknowledging that you want to make a change, right? You can't change what you don't acknowledge, right? When you're ready to acknowledge it, then you can start making a change, whether it's personally, professionally, spiritually, you name it. So you can't change it unless you acknowledge it. If you can acknowledge it, you've made that first step. Now make a hierarchy for yourself. Step 1, step 2, to learn, to take an effort, to take ownership of whatever that piece of your life is.
You know, as a financial advisor, Jonathan and I working with a lot of women, and unfortunately the numbers and the statistics for women financially and what happens to them, say like after a divorce, for example, is not good at all. And you know, one of the passions that we have is to help women take ownership of that. And I'd love for the audience to be able to hear a little bit about your story, you know, as it relates to money and back when you were a little girl, because we were talking about that fear, and you know, we identify that, but typically we have to peel back. It's like an onion, right? We have to kind of keep digging deeper and finding out where is the root of that fear coming from. And you spoke to that so beautifully the other day on the phone about where the root of that fear was for you, like even in how you met your husband and how you decided, you know, the type of man you were going to marry. I just thought that was powerful. Would you mind sharing that?
Sure. And I said this on the phone too. There's one of my favorite artists. His name is Andy Grammer, and he has an album and a song called The Good Parts, right? So you're asking, you know, not just the top layer stuff, but what happened in the past to help make those active decisions. Yeah. So I grew up up north, and total nuclear family, mom, dad, brothers and sisters, but money was always scarce. Like we were always, when I say my family was living paycheck to paycheck, I'm not kidding. Sometimes they didn't have enough paychecks. So, you know, I do have specific memories. One specifically where, my parents were talking about, I don't know, the mortgage or whatever the money issue was that month. And I had a piggy bank, and, you know, being 10 years old or whatever, I didn't know anything. So I just got out my piggy bank with my sister, and we handed it to our parents and said, I don't know if this will help, but I want to give you this to help pay the bills. Do I fault absolutely not. My history if I didn't have that history and that moment, that wouldn't have necessarily pointed my trajectory to where it was. But that's just one example. I wasn't fearful then. I just was trying to help, right? But I do remember that. I also started working when I was 12 years old. I actually started babysitting at 12. By the time I was 14, I was such a popular babysitter that I got asked to go on vacation and be a nanny for other families. So I literally got to experience other families and how they navigate marriage, how they navigate communication, how they navigate finances, because I was living in their homes with them. So through that, I got to be a literal fly on the wall and see how they navigate, all these things. So I learned. I just intook information that I learned. And then I said, I like that in a relationship. I like that in the way they handle money. I like that in a spouse. I like that vibe. So by the time, and I knew I had to make money because I knew I would have to buy my own car and put myself through college. But I took all that information with me and I filed it in the back of my head. What do I want in a spouse? What do I want in what my family life is going to look like? What do I want based on what I observed in what a future would look like with a family. And I filed it away and I made these active decisions. Again, very active. These are not things that are possibilities in a future. These are musts in a future. Must be financially stable. Must not live outside your means. Must have a relationship with my spouse where there was open communication and we both had the same life goals, right? Mm-hmm. Because love is one thing, but liking a person is just as important, if not more important, because love can be painful. Mm-hmm. I want to like you. Mm-hmm. Do I like you? And so I made it when my husband and I were dating, we weren't afraid to talk about those deep questions. What does retirement look like for you? We were only 25, but they were important questions because if retirement looked much different to him than it did to me, or, all the family, what does family look like for you? We talked about all those things even when we were dating because those were important questions to ask. And that led me to live the life that not necessarily I dreamed of, but that at least we were walking similar paths.
Yep. And today, as a result of that, you said you guys are debt free.
Yes.
And you don't fight over money. And your kids, you've been present with your children. And so I loved what you also said about this transfer to your kids. And so for you, for you listeners out there, whatever situation you currently find yourself in, the good thing is that something that I say. I met this gentleman who his whole body was burned, and he'd went on to be completely successful. Now, looking at him, it was horrific.
Sure.
But I had a chance to talk with him, and I shared some things with him, and he said to me, looked in my eyes, and he says, "This is not where it ends." And so for you listeners, as I'm listening to you, thinking, wherever you're at, if you're in a hard spot, this is not where it ends. That's not where it has to end unless you stop. And the other thing that I think about as you're talking, when people make decisions, they spend so much time, and I feel like people get stuck trying to figure out how they're going to do something. But what I just heard you say is you decided.
Actively.
Then you made the commitment. Then the how came. So it's like we get that backwards. The how will come once you decide, and then once in your heart you commit to whatever that is that you want to do, whether it's finding the right spouse or having the retirement that you want, or whatever that is.
Yeah, I don't believe me. Please don't think that I need to see the end result, right? That happened organically, but I'm at least making active. I don't know what the end result is going to be. I don't know nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But for me, I've set as best I can. I have made a decision to learn and educate and use technology to learn so that I can, best of my ability, set myself up for success, set my family up for success, and set my children up for success. I can't change what happened in the past. I can only, organically maneuver what's happening now. So we're constantly making changes, but these were small steps that got me to where I am today. So yes, when we first got married, one of our first goals, like I said, was I had a lot of student debt, right? So we worked to pay off that debt. We did not buy at all outside of our means at that time. And we were poor. We were poor. We could barely afford a honeymoon. Our honeymoon cost $1,000. That's all we could afford. And we thought, man, we're living large at $1,000, right? That might be more than other people can afford, but for us, that was our threshold, and we made sure. Since the day we met, this day we decided we were going to get married, we merged and talked about finances. What does your finances look like? What does your finances look like, right? And we made goals, and we decided step by step to make those goals. If you don't have a spouse, then make those goals for yourself. Acknowledge where you are, and then set a plan for yourself. You don't have to know where it's going to end. Just acknowledge it and start where you're going to start, even if it's just writing it down. That's a great place to start.
So many folks come in, and I'm amazed that, they may be 5 to 10 years away from retirement, and they do not have a plan. Jonathan and I will ask them, do you have a financial plan? And they'll say yes. But all they really have is an investment portfolio, but they don't have a plan. And, we believe that money is just a tool to really improve the quality of your life. And so, people think financial planning is complicated, but it's really not. It's really what's happening, what you and I are doing right now. It's a conversation. And sometimes it's very helpful to have somebody asking those questions because once you connect
Yeah.
and you begin to have the courage to dream a little bit, then it becomes clear. You start talking it out. And then financial planning is not an exact science. It's like, okay, we start putting it together, but we leave flexibility in because life happens. Murphy shows up, right? And we have to be able to adjust. But the important thing is having a written financial plan that covers every aspect of your life. And the reason you and your husband are where you are today is because you decided
To make a plan.
Yeah. And you committed it and you've done it, and you've done it together.
Yeah. Have we had to change our plans? Absolutely. My son had a health crisis a few years ago. Well, that put a wrench in our plans. So we had to, make changes based on that. But, we have planned enough at this juncture that if life throws a curveball at us, we have, as I said, set ourselves up for success, that if there was a job loss, if there was a health crisis, we can do that. For those that are, closer to retirement, it's not too late, right? There are places you can go, and people there are financial advisors who are literally there to help you, just like you guys are. Ask for help. That's the other thing, as I have found, is people are afraid to ask for help because they're afraid of the reaction that they're going to get. What do you mean? You don't have a plan, or they just feel, if you're afraid to ask for help, you're doing yourself a disservice, because people, as humans, we want to help each other. Mm-hmm. It just comes naturally to be able to say, we all come together when there's crises in the universe or in the country, but people want to help others. It's just an innate desire we have, and there's someone there to help you. You just have to ask.
Exactly.
Just ask, and people will help, or they'll point you in the right direction of someone that can help you.
Yeah, and you don't have to be. The good news is that you don't have to be an economist, to be successful and to have a very successful financial plan. It's being willing to decide, take action, and ask for help, because most people, they don't know what to do, they don't know where to start, and so they don't do anything. It was like, I tell a story of people, ladies will ask, well, why are two guys, Jonathan and myself, why are we so motivated to help women with their money? And both of us have a story. For him, it was his mother. For me, it was my grandmother. When my grandfather suddenly passed away, I watched everything change, and how my grandmother, who was this strong, confident, very decisive woman, become afraid, indecisive, and very fearful of what the future held. And she told me, she said, we never got around to really putting a financial plan together and to talk out these types of things. Of planning for the unexpected. And as a result of that, it changed the whole dynamic of our family. And so, when I made the decision over 25 years ago to become an advisor, it was like, I want to help families. I want to help families know, hey, the answers are out there. And it's not as hard as you think it's going to be. And it's not as scary. But that's why it's important to have the right team of people around you. And I can remember you told me, you said you went to a David Bach.
Man.
We do some stuff with David Bach.
Man, I'm a David Bach. We were the original. I was the original Smart Women Finish Rich. And then once we got married, we were the original Smart Couples Finish Rich. So, yeah. But even in that, right? Like there was someone who had walked that path and had, a sort of a kind of a layout for us, and we just made it our own. But something I wanted to get back to something you were saying, about the fear, or, I do, I dabble in a lot, right? Like I'm a big TED Talk person. I'm, on my runs, I don't listen to music. I listen to TED Talks, right? I'm constantly trying to learn something. I'm in a constant mode of learning. And I know, here's what I have heard, and here's what I think I know, because it resonates with me, is that when something happens that is unexpected, anything, you're either going to go into fight mode, flight mode, or freeze mode. Okay?
So true.
Yeah. If you don't, when you go into fight mode, I'll tell you what comes more what I've had to learn to do is if something unexpected happens, I go into fight mode. I have taught myself to go into fight mode. So if there's an unexpected financial thing, I want to drive through it to keep the needle moving forward. Some people go into flight mode where they're just like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to pretend it didn't happen. I just want it to go away. That's flight. Some people go into freeze mode. So they can't move at all. They are just stuck and stunned. So financials, they're freezing, and therefore they make no movement at all because they're stuck where they are. So when I talk to people, I will even acknowledge for them, you're freezing right now. You're frozen. You're frozen. And I can say that from, I met another mom whose daughter went through the same health crisis as my son. And I acknowledged it for her. I said, you're frozen right now in a fight, flight, or in this fight, flight, or freeze situation. You're frozen, aren't you? Because she wasn't doing anything. She didn't know what to do, so she did nothing. And that's the worst thing you can do, is do nothing, because nothing's going to change. Mm-hmm. So I have helped guide her. I'm like, what do I have to do to help move that first step forward so we can get the needle moving? Because you've acknowledged you're frozen, and I'm agreeing with you. Let's do something.
Right.
But that's okay. That's that's not okay, but that's what comes naturally to her. And the same thing for finances, right? I'm just going to pretend you're either going to fight and make active decisions, you're going to flight and run away, or you're going to freeze and do nothing. I want women to understand, please fight. Find the people who can be part of your tribe and part of your army to help you fight, not flight or freeze. So find that army.
That is so good. I wrote down having the right friends in your life is critical. I mean, what you just described right there is a true friend that truly cares about someone, to be able to speak truth. And so, if who you're hanging around and who's speaking into you, who you're listening to, is so important. Absolutely. And so if you find yourself, I know that I've there's times in my life where, my wife and I aren't getting along, or, just things aren't going really well. There's just some bad energy in my life right now.
Bad energy.
It's like I've stopped and realized, I can tie that back to conversations that I've had with other men that weren't positive. They weren't talking positive about their spouse, or they weren't talking positive about this. They weren't talking positive about what's going on in the economy or whatever it is. And then I take that on. And now it's like the filter that I'm looking at life through has really got some dirt in it that has come from the people that I'm choosing to spend my discretionary time with.
Wow.
My preacher said, he said, I can tell a lot about your life by looking at two things, your checkbook and your calendar, and who are you spending your time with? Just like you made a conscious choice. You could listen to music, and there's nothing wrong with listening to music. But the fact that you're saying, hey, I'm going to take some time because I care about me. That's the one thing I get with you. It's like you really, not in a prideful way, in a humble way, you care about yourself. And enough that you're willing to make an investment into you. Yeah. And then that comes out. And so if you're in a situation, ladies out there, where you're in that valley, look around and look at who is beside you, who's with you, and you might have to make some tough choices. I'll tell you this one story. When I was in college, I was on the wrong road, and my roommate was studying for nursing, and so it required a lot of focus and discipline to study and all that. Well, I was running around, with other guys, and I remember he walked in my room and he called me G. He said, G, he said, I love you like a brother. He says, but I hate who you're becoming.
Wow.
I mean, that was a turning point in my life because one, I cared about him, but he did that. It changed the whole direction of my life. And here's what was the interesting part. He said, those guys you're running with are not your friends. I said, no, there they are. I argued with him. I made a decision to pull away because every Thursday night we went out. And so we were at a little restaurant, kind of a bar restaurant. Stan and I went. That was my roommate's name. And guess who walked in? There was always 4 of us, okay? So there was the guys that I was with, I almost said their names. I won't mention their names. But when we came in, there was 4.
Okay.
So in other words, they filled my spot, and they never even called to ask where I was. Hey, where are you, man? What's going on? And it was like, that was an aha moment. It was like, okay, why was I choosing to hang with those people?
Sure.
But I made a conscious decision because a friend loved me enough to tell me the truth.
Exactly.
To tell me the truth.
Yes. To acknowledge, he saw it through a different lens.
He did.
And that's incredible that you actually mentioned that, because we didn't talk about this. But the thing that I say to my kids, because I've taught them early, is the people that you hang around with, find people that lift you up and bring out the best in you. A friend is someone who brings you joy. If you have to watch who you are, or edit what you say, or change what you are feeling when you're around someone, then that's not a friend. You want to find people who accept, move you, bring out the best in you. Mm-hmm. So, kids, right? Like teenagers, I got 2 of them, right? It's a constant discussion with them. But I'll ask them, does this person bring you joy? Do you like being around them? Do you like who you are when you're around them? Do they fill you up, right? Do they fill you up as a person? That's who you need to be around with. I'm giving them the opportunity to navigate. I'm trying to teach them to help themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay. Instead of telling them you shouldn't hang around that person, I want them to come to that conclusion on their own. Mm-hmm. And opposite, that person does lift me up. That person does bring me joy. That person does bring out the best in me. I want them to come to those conclusions on their own. And it's the same thing for me. I actively chose, since I was younger, to surround myself with people who I could learn from, who lift me up, who bring out the joy in me, and who we could be honest with each other, right? And I'm living that too. I only surround myself with people who move my needle forward, even at this point. It's again, I come back to this active decision. It was an active decision. And just because you have a history with someone doesn't mean that you have to maintain. You can have a history with someone but it doesn't mean you can't keep them at arm's length, right? Mm-hmm. If they're not bringing out the best in you and they're not helping move you forward, then it may be that you need to, meet other people or surround yourself, because you will be, find where you want to be, because those people will lift you up to where you want to be.
Absolutely.
Right?
They really will. And, something that just came to my mind, even in my own life, is I have found that because of something called codependence, which, I've had a lot of in growing up in my family there. Well, that could be a whole nother podcast to talk about codependence. But I found that I've spent so much energy in my life trying, mm-hmm. to keep relationships intact, to keep people in my life, and going after people who are not I heard someone say, that you want a for you kind of friend. And I want to be a for you kind of friend. And it's like, he said, a buddy of mine, he said, Glenn, he said, you've got so much to offer. And he said, so why don't you let go of some of those relationships that you are working so hard
to maintain.
Because
you got a history together.
Because I got a history together, so that you can be, so that you're going to be in a place to receive, the new friends or the new people that may come in your life, that are in the future.
Yeah.
And so, have you ever, do you see that?
Absolutely. Right. Which is why I said, there again, it's all just conscious decisions, right? Just sort of a lot of self-reflection. And, it all comes back to just acknowledging. I got to acknowledge. I can't change what I don't acknowledge. Right. And so if I acknowledge it, then I can say, all right, so now, and making out a plan. Right. So, joining clubs, join a club, join a new hobby, go to a financial advisor meeting, right? Find your people who are like, yeah, I get you, right? Because you just don't get stuck. Don't freeze. Don't get stuck and don't flee. Please don't flee. Just if you flee, nothing's going to change. And I just never, when I find those people, I'm going to be like your roommate or your friend and say, right? Because they may not be able to see from a neutral third party what's going on, but I'll acknowledge it for you in a nice way, right? When the timing is right, if I feel like they're in a good place, I'm not like, I'm very careful, right? Being able to read the room, I can read the room and say, yeah, I just want to put this out there for you. How does that feel to you if I notice this? And, just understanding yourself, understanding others, and being in a constant mode of learning is going to just move you forward, right? Because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, man.
Absolutely. Well, and I loved what you said about building your team. And that's that's a theme here that we have at Keystone Financial Resources is we have a team. We have a team of people that are excellent at their particular role that they play on this team. And so it's not just one person. It usually, like you said, build your tribe, build your team of people that know you, that care about you, and that can help you design that. And so we preach that all the time, and that's what we love about what we do here at Keystone is helping families build their financial plan, but doing it with a team of people who genuinely get to know them and who care about them and who are invested in helping them achieve their goals. Well, Athena, thank you so much for being here today. Real quick, where can people find you? If they want to learn more about Athena or learn more about what you're doing with the magazine, because it's been phenomenal for us.
Oh, well, thank you. So you can go to City Lifestyle. If you want to see a digital copy, you can go to citylifestyle.com /Franklin, citylifestyle.com /Franklin. My email is athena.west@lifestylepubs.com. And my phone, no, I won't give out my phone number, but I love getting feedback. I love getting story ideas because I live in this community too, right? So I love hearing the story behind the story of everybody that lives here. And even if you need to email me and ask me, some questions about how I, the active choices that I've made, I'm happy to tell those stories because you'll see, that I made these things along the way. And even if I just need to be that person for you to acknowledge whether, that first step, I'll help you do that because I've been there and I did it and I do it all the time. It's natural to me to just talk and get the story behind the story, which is what I do in the magazine. Yeah. I'm getting the story behind the story.
Yep.
Right? We're getting to the good parts.
To the good part. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Athena. This has been so much fun.
Thank you.
Would you come back next week?
Yes.
Maybe we'll do part 2.
Part 2.
Yeah, it'll be coming, ladies, I promise. But thank you all very much and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Bye, ladies.
You have been listening to Her Time to Retire with Glenn Price and Jonathan Scott. Glenn and Jonathan would love to talk to you and answer any of your retirement questions. All listeners can take advantage of a free 15-minute consultation with Glenn and Jonathan, whether via a phone call, Zoom meeting, or in person. You can schedule your consultation by calling 615-661-9554 or by visiting our website at www.keystonefinancialresources.com. Thanks for listening. The opinions expressed by Keystone Financial Resources and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, LLC, or BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and Keystone Financial Resources are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM, but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents.